Do you want to stay more focused on the right goals in your life, or even just figure out what the right goals are for you? Do you want clarity? Do you want better work-life balance? Well, you're in the right place. Welcome to Success Through Failure.
Welcome to the Success Through Failure podcast, the show that reveals failure as your path to success. You'll listen to intriguing interviews with some of the most successful people on the planet and learn how their failures became a launchpad for success and how yours can too. Here's your host, former Division I All-American wrestler, former Division I head coach, speaker, and personal coach, Jim Harshaw.
Welcome to another episode of Success Through Failure. I hope you had a great holidays. We certainly did at the Harshaw house, despite having one child, my 3-year-old, got pneumonia. Another one, my son, Wyatt, he ended up in the emergency room late one night for a pretty severe asthma attack. We had a dog that threw up all over the house and the normal stuff like that too. But it was chaos, but it was an amazing, awesome blessing of a Christmas. And very thankful, very grateful for everything that we have in our family. So it was a great holidays for us. I hope it was for you as well. Now, today I bring you Tom Flick. Before I switch over to that interview, I'm recording this separately. Before I switch over to that interview with Tom, I want to remind you or mention that a few episodes ago, I think I actually brought this up, that I had apparently changed a setting on my computer when I was recording these interviews. And instead of pulling the audio from my fancy mic, expensive mic that I'm using right now, it actually pulled the audio just straight from my computer. So the microphone on the computer is just not nearly as good as the one I'm using now. So I appreciate you sort of bearing with me through these few episodes, because there's a couple more, because I record these interviews. I don't always send them out, right away the week after I record them. Sometimes I save them for a little while and sort of dole them out as I can. Sometimes I record them in batches. So there may be one or two more in here, but I appreciate your patience in listening to these episodes that have less than ideal audio quality. On to today's interview. Today's interview with Tom Flick. He was just this is just one of those interviews where, I walked away really feeling good about the guy that I had just spoken with. He's just like a really warm, wise sort of mentor of a person. It comes across in this interview. I felt that in the discussion that I had with him both before and after the podcast. Just a really, really good guy. So I think you're going to really enjoy this interview with Tom Flick. Now, a little bit about him. Tom has garnered a reputation around the world as an authority on leadership by helping organizations such as Google, Starbucks, Boeing, and the Pentagon to develop leaders, lead change, increase teamwork, and accelerate personal and organizational performance. Tom draws on his leadership experience as a former NFL quarterback, his work with the world's foremost authority on change leadership, which is Harvard professor Dr. John Kotter, and his extensive work in corporate America to provide actionable solutions that allow people to become peak performers both personally and professionally. Now, of course, as I always tell you, if you don't have time to listen to this entire episode, make sure you grab the action plan. There's tons of good stuff in the action plan, just some of the bullet points if you want to sort of review what you learned or you don't have time to learn everything or listen to everything here. Grab the action plan, jimharshawjr.com/action. That's jimharshawjr.com/action. Now let's get to my interview with Tom Flick. Tom, welcome to the show.
Jim, thank you for having me. It's nice to be with you today.
Yeah, likewise. I've followed you for a long time and just interacted with you a little bit on Twitter, and I just read about you a while back, and I said, God, I got to have this guy on the show. And so, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about yourself. Tell us, maybe where you grew up, a little bit about your path to the NFL.
Sure, you bet. I'm just real quickly. I'm one of 7 kids, 6 out of 7 on the totem pole. Grew up in a really kind of eclectic, unique family where a brother was a professional, world-ranked freestyle skier. Brother was a professional surfer. Sister's a heck of a tennis player. One's a heck of a golfer. Dad and mom dad was at least a skeet shooting champion, national champion. And mom also was a champion too. So it's just really a weird family. Wow, and I fell in love with the ball that bounced. It was oblong. It was a football. I played all the sports, but that's the one I loved the most, and that's the one I pursued. And so played at the University of Washington. I'm from Seattle, up here in the Great Northwest, and played for the Washington Huskies under a guy named Don James. I backed up a guy named Warren Moon. I figured I'd let Warren play out his career before I took over. And and then was drafted by Joe Gibbs his rookie season with the Washington Redskins and played 7 seasons in the National Football League. And then from that, Jim, was actually called into what I'm doing presently. It was nothing planned or strategized. I think God just said, hey, this is what I built you for. And so what I do is I speak around the world on the topics of leading change and leadership to organizations around the world. So that's what I've been doing for the last 20 plus years.
So tell us a little bit more about that transition into speaking. I mean, when you hung up your cleats for the last time, was it like, okay, I'm going to go start speaking? This is what I'm going to do. I mean, tell us about that transition.
Gosh, I tell you, no, just the opposite. I mean, if people that know me, and even when I was young, my nickname was Silent Sam, and I was given that nickname because I was just so reserved and quiet and shy. I think I expressed on a basketball court or a baseball diamond, or certainly on a football field. That's where my personality came out, and I felt really kind of myself to be who I am. But no, I'm very quiet and very shy. And so when I felt this prompting to go into this speaking, I thought, good Lord, this is not what I want. And by a step of faith, stepped out and said, okay, I'll give it a shot. And next thing I knew that this is really what I was wired to be. I think everything before that was kind of a precursor, kind of a setup, kind of the failures that I'd had, kind of the challenges that I'd faced, and all these things that kind of molded me into having experiences and kind of a perspective that allowed me to really go where I think God built me to be. And that's really kind of, I think, kind of an encourager of people. So I share these topics and situations and this knowledge base that I've got. Certainly have been, mentored by some great, great, great leaders around the world. But it was never a plan, Jim. It's just kind of an odd thing. It was more of a calling.
So that's interesting. So what do you say to the listener who's sitting there and they feel like, they feel tugged, they feel called to one thing, but they say, but that can't be right because I can't be a public speaker or a motivational speaker because I'm, my nickname's Silent Sam. I can't start a business because I don't, numbers aren't my thing. I don't know the accounting part. I can't do whatever it is. I can't even have a healthy relationship. Maybe it is. Maybe I can't have a healthy relationship because I didn't have role models as parents that had a healthy relationship. And, I've never been in a healthy relationship myself. So how am I supposed to do that? Or I can't lose the weight or whatever the case may be. I mean, what do you say to somebody like that?
Well, it's a great question. And what I would say is that I get called a lot by executives who say, hey, I'm retiring. I'm stepping down as president or CEO of this company, and I'd love to do what you do. Can you mentor me and coach me? And I do some. I don't have the time to do a lot, but I do. But I do say, hey, why do you want to do it? Well, it looks neat. It seems like a really cool thing to do. And I'm going, whoa. What I tell a lot of young people, I say, go speak, 500 times for free and then come back and talk. And then you're about ready to roll, because that's what I did initially. I got out and I just went and spoke. I just gave myself away. I didn't, hey, if you got, you have a budget, great. If you don't, that's great too, because I need to learn a craft. And I think that's what I learned as an athlete was that, the 10,000 hour rule, I fall into that category. The book's out. You've probably read the research that for someone to be a master of something, you need to put a lot of time into it. And I did. I threw a football, 12 months out of the year. After basketball practice, I'd be throwing the ball. After baseball practice, I'd be throwing the ball. And so I just got really committed into it. And so for those people that are out there that might be wondering, as you posed in your question, should I do this or can that happen? I think we need to be open to it. That's what I needed to do. And I think I stepped out in faith and said, yeah, I'll give it a shot, because I feel this big prompting on my heart that this is what I'm supposed to do, even though it just is so against everything that I am. And so, so it's a little bit of a faith journey for a lot of people that needs to step out and take a chance, take a risk. Life is too short sometimes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so the book you referenced with the 10,000 hour rule for the listener is Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell,
right? And
which is a great book. And you mentioned, so you go out and you speak hundreds of times for free, and I think a lot of people look at a guy like you, NFL quarterback, if you read some of Tom's stats for the listener, if you read some of his stats in history, it's like, amazing athlete and, played in college, played Division I and was very successful there and drafted and played in the NFL. You think, oh, well, he was an NFL quarterback. It's easy. He just stepped out and everybody wants to hire him to speak. And it's not that easy, right? It always looks so much easier for the other person, right? Well, it's not. It takes so much more work. We just see like an iceberg, you just see the tip of the iceberg, and there's so much more behind the scenes that we don't see. It's the failures, the struggles, the self-doubt, the questioning along the way. And you actually referenced that just a minute ago. You said, the failures you've had along the way have sort of shaped you. Can you share a time when you failed, maybe felt that self-doubt? Maybe it's a thing where, from the outside looking in, we don't know about you, that you failed, but and how you overcame that.
Yeah, I think for all of us as human beings, I think that's the big challenge is the fear of failure. And will I measure up? Will I be able to, overcome? And I've had numerous things that have failed. And I think really, the failures have really shaped who I am. It's created a tremendous sense of humility. It's created a great sense of being outward looking instead of inward looking. It's really allowed me to kind of be the person I hope I am and becoming, that I'm proud of becoming, and in the sense of being a servant instead of being a taker, instead of someone who's I'm an investor instead of someone who's always wants things to be done for themselves. But I never got there without the chance of stumbling and falling. And I really feel like my NFL career, I was a backup most of my career. I don't feel there's regret in a lot of that, in the sense that I didn't accomplish what I thought I could have or should have. So I felt like I kind of failed in that matter. But then I think God takes those things and says, hey, you know what? Those are the building blocks that make you who you are today and what I want you to do today. And so I those types of things have really kind of fortified. And so I'm not afraid so much as I used to be about taking risks, taking a chance. Am I nervous sometimes? Yes. Sometimes I get asked by clients to take them places where I'm thinking, okay, can I go there? Can I, do I have the capabilities of really, leading them to where they think I can take them? And stepping out kind of in faith on those situations, just because of past experiences, has said that, yes, I've tried it before. I've been afraid before. I've been scared before. But I can do these things and have faith and trust that I can pull them off. So, yeah, I mean, I know that's kind of all over the map response to your question, but really the failures have really been a big part of kind of shaping who I am. And it's all part of life. There's kind of the yin and the yang, the kind of those things that really kind of build fortitude and discipline and determination, I think have always come from things that have just, when things have been hard and challenging.
Yeah, and I think it's really important for the listener to hear that and understand that no matter where you're at in life, if you're, within arm's reach of your ideal life and your ultimate goals, or if it's further away now than ever, it doesn't matter where you're at on the spectrum. Like, the struggle is normal. It's not as easy for other people as it looks to you. You have to wake up early. You have to stay late. You have to do more than you think that you have to do a lot of times just to get to where you want to go. And it's not easy. It's not as easy as it looks. The grass is always greener is such a great quote. It's cliche, but it's true.
Yeah, let me say something. There's no, listen, this is going to come across so plain Jane to your listeners, but there's no substitute for work. There just is not. Right. I mean, I mentioned the 10,000 hour rule, and when I was a young kid in high school, my desire, since I've been a young boy, is to be a professional football player. And I used to set my alarm every couple of weeks in the middle of the night. I'd set it for 2 or 3 in the morning. I live up in the Northwest. It rains a lot. It's kind of, we're known for our rain. But I would pick one of the worst nights to set my alarm at 2 or 3 in the morning. I'd get up and run, 3 or 4 miles and then come back, shower, go to bed and then get up for school. And Why did I do that? Well, I did it because no one else in the league is ever going to do it. No one would be that stupid to get up. But so you take those things, and I was constantly focusing on that. And I did the same thing in speaking. When I started speaking, I actually went and chose to speak in junior highs and high schools for the first 5 years. And trust me, that's the toughest place. You go try and hold kids for a 45, 50-minute period of time on a Friday afternoon in a gym that's packed and it's about 90 degrees and they know the weekend's right around the corner. I mean, you go try and hold an audience like that. And I did it on purpose. And I did a teacher development thing. I did a parent night thing. And I did it. And I knew that I was geared and God was gearing me to go into the corporate work. But I actually went down into the educational systems and really worked there first because it was the greatest way to learn how to speak. And I figured if you can develop your chops in that type of environment, you can do it anywhere. So I actually postponed, the corporate move and went and spoke in a tougher area just because I knew that's what I needed to do. So
you put in the work, and now you're an international speaker on leadership. And one of the things you say, and I got this off your website, you say that your expertise is in helping companies develop and grow their most valuable asset, their people. Why is that important?
Well, like anything, it's not programs or projects that really make companies go. It's the people behind them. And that's why leadership is so near and dear to my heart, because I came from an understanding my whole life of being and playing the position of quarterback that I had 10 different men that came inside of a huddle each and every time. And they're black and they're white and they come from different socioeconomic backgrounds and histories and belief systems. But we wear a uniform. And so my job was to step into a huddle and focus the energy of 10 men to go do one thing collectively together. And that's leadership. And I'm a firm believer that you don't win with leadership at the top. And if I can explain that, Jim, it's, I think what we've fallen into in corporate America is this sense that you win with, one charismatic leader that's at the top of the hierarchy. And I don't believe that's true. I don't think you can for a number of reasons. One, the world is moving way too fast. Globalization and technology has made that happen. We live in a very flat society. And so competition being what it is at such a keen level that we need to win with leadership in the middle. Great leaders really understand that you drive leadership down through the organization and you win with people in the middle. And that's my belief system and something that I talk about and teach quite often. But yeah, leadership is really what makes things go. And I think the more people that are empowered to lead, the better our society is, our communities, our governments, our nations, and our homes. So that's what I speak about. Yeah.
It's interesting you mentioned about leadership in the middle and driving it the whole way down through. One of my guests, episode 62, Antonio Centeno, for the listener, if you want to go back to listen to that episode. But he talked about that kind of leadership in the Marines. And he talked about how leadership has to be driven down to the front lines because that's where oftentimes the decisions have to be made. And especially, in a military situation, in a war situation, if they're confronting the enemy, like they have to have the ability to make tough decisions without input from their, quote unquote leaders. And so it's interesting to hear you talk about that as well.
Well, let me just remark on that, if you don't mind. I mean, think about, in peacetime, think about an army in peacetime and wartime. So if you're in peacetime, you can really function with leadership right at the very top of the hierarchy and good management throughout the organization. But in wartime, you can't manage someone into battle. You lead someone into battle, right? And giving people this intent and this understanding and this ability to say, I can make decisions and tough decisions, and yet I've got that, So that's no different for corporate America today. And I think that's a struggle, and I think we're starting to overcome that struggle a little bit and understand that, it's just not me as a senior leader or my senior leadership team. I've got to empower these people that are giving the discretionary effort that is going to allow us, because we can't do this without them really being on board. And I think no longer can you just dictate things down to the organization. You've got to invite them into this kind of a great journey, an adventure of going where the vision, describes they need to be. So
I want to pause the interview quickly to share something really important.
For years, I struggled to find the clarity of purpose in my life and the single-minded focus that I had when I was an athlete. It just felt like I was working hard but not really getting any closer to where I wanted to go. And to be honest, I really didn't even know or have a clear vision on where I wanted to go. Then I discovered a powerful 4-step blueprint that I began to apply to my life, and it changed everything. Now, every morning, I'm excited to attack the day because I have a clarity of purpose and I have confidence in my plan, and I have peace of mind in knowing that I'm back on that path to elite success. Anyone, and I mean anyone, can use this 4-step process to recreate the key elements in the life of an elite performer so you can regain that clarity of purpose and that single-minded focus so that you can both achieve your goals and live a balanced life. I created a free PDF for you outlining the 4-step Reveal Your Path Blueprint for Success. Just go to jimharshawjr.com/blueprint. That's jimharshawjr.com/blueprint to get instant access to that free PDF.
So when you go into a company like, some of the companies we mentioned in the intro was Google, Starbucks, Boeing, even the Pentagon, what sort of, I want to say problems, but let's say opportunities do you see that organizations have in creating higher performance?
That's a good question. I think, really, if the biggest challenge first I find is that organizations make everything, when they come together, we get to an offsite, we get to a conference, we get to a really important meeting, they end up making it an intellectual exercise. And what I mean by that is they were educated men and women, so we're fast to use the brain, we're slow to appeal to the heart. And whether you want to be the world's greatest bank or the most compassionate hospital or the most service-oriented hotel, feelings are more influential than thought when it comes to affecting change. It is. And they fail to realize that. So they talk about ROI and metrics and research and those types of things at one of these conferences or senior leadership meeting that I'm in. And I got to be honest with you, most people don't give a hoot. They just don't. I mean, it's important, and they know that it's important, but not for them affecting how they see the world, their role in it, their responsibility to be a part of it, a change effort. And so we work with the head much too much and fail to really appeal to the heart. I find that's the biggest challenge, Jim. But you can think about it just for a second. And those of you who are listening to your podcast, I mean, think about it. Think about the greatest team you've ever been on. Here's a couple. How did it make you feel, and what did it have that made it great? And it could be a team. It could have been a choir. It could have been someone in a biology class. It could have been in debates. It could have been a sports team. But it typically was, if you're trying to look for one word that can kind of encapsulate the whole thing, it's probably the word trust.
Yeah,
and
sure.
Trust isn't, and it's not a predictive trust, meaning, hey, listen, I've watched the arc of your performance. I trust that you're going to continue in that arc of performance. That's what happens in the NFL lots of times. A player puts together a really good year, his contract's up, and so they pay him a lot of money, right? Because they're predicting that his performance is going to continue into the future in that arc. It's also predictive trust is also described as, hey, I know what buttons to push or words to say to make you do something. I can make you jump or make you go do this just by the way I can manipulate, by the way I communicate to you. But the trust I'm talking about is vulnerability trust. It's a safety. It's where you can bring your shortcomings, your weaknesses, your challenges to the table and not be crucified for it, in the sense of by losing something like self-esteem or self-respect. And so, that's what makes great teams. So who do you think about, if you're a football player or you're someone in an organization, you'll go rally around someone who says, I need you. You're valuable. We need your insight, your ideas, your passion to help us achieve this great vision. Come, what they do is they create a sense of urgency, true urgency, and allow people to know that, hey, you are so valuable that we can't do this without you. And you go fight for people like that. You go play for people like that. You run through a wall for someone like that, right? You don't run through a wall for someone who says, hey, the ROI says this and we have 45 metrics. It just doesn't work.
Yeah. So am I hearing you say authenticity? Is that basically what we're talking about, is being authentic, being genuine?
Absolutely.
It's interesting. So I'm going to reference another episode here. Episode 67, I interviewed Steve Garland. Steve Garland he happens to be a close friend of mine. He's the head wrestling coach at the University of Virginia. Amazing story, amazing backstory. And this guy he's actually becoming a sought out speaker now because he's so genuinely authentic that you instantly build a bond with this guy, and his wrestlers will go to battle for him. And it's really interesting to see that type of leadership when, I mean, he is as vulnerable and authentic as a person as you'll ever meet. I mean, he will share all his flaws, and it makes people just gravitate towards him and want to be around him and want to support him and want to compete for him and help him in any way, whether they're his athletes or people who work around him. But that's a hard thing, especially I would say maybe especially for men, or maybe just especially for people in a corporate environment, in any work environment, because we want to keep up this strong front. We don't want to show people that we have weaknesses. We don't want to show people that we, I don't know, maybe that we depend on them, right?
Absolutely. And your friend, your coach friend, sounds like an amazing gentleman, and he's right on the money. Listen, we're afraid to do that. That's the old ways, the old systems of how we used to think. But we want to empower people. And here's the biggest challenge: trying to be a perfect leader. Perfection is a killer, and here's why it's a killer. It creates too high of a risk quotient for people. Here's why: because as soon as you make a mistake, you're nailed for it. Authenticity, admitting you're wrong, saying, I'm sorry, I don't have the answers, I'll go resource you, I'll go figure it out for you. That authenticity actually breeds followers because they want someone who's real and authentic and honest and compassionate and understanding. And, I've got a great story, if you don't mind. I was hired probably 12, 13 years ago from a holding company out of Dallas, Texas. The CEO invited myself and Ken Blanchard and another gentleman to put the messaging together for their 3-day weekend with their senior leaders. And it was really interesting. This guy, I'll withhold his name. He's just one of the most genuine, amazing men I've ever met in my life. But about a month later, after we, signed the contract and so forth, and I was going to come down and work with this company, a couple of weeks later after we signed that, he said, he'd give me a call. He said, I'm coming to Seattle. I said, great. And I interrupted him. I said, hey, Tim, do you mind if I have a chance to meet you? And he says, hey, I'm flying to Seattle just to meet you, period. I'm going to meet in the Admiral's room if you got time. I've got a little lunch I'll have catered for us. And then, I just want to get to know you. I can't know you over the phone. And then I'm going to fly out. I thought, you're flying all the way to meet me? And he said, yeah. And so I show up in this Admiral's room. I don't know what Tim looks like. And a guy comes up and embraces me. And I'm hoping this is Tim. And so he steps away and puts his hand out. Tom, I'm Tim. And Tim, I'm Tom. And we have this lunch. But after the lunch was finished and taken away, he said, I would like, if you don't mind, can I please tell you my story? And I didn't know what he meant, but I said, by all means, of course. And so he began to tell me his story from childhood. And he told me about him being a young boy living in a garage, kind of a mechanic's garage, gas station, and that's where his family lived. His dad was a mechanic, and how they had enough food for one meal a day. And he kind of moves through all this, and he shared very personal things and his failures, flat out his failures to me. And one time he actually became emotional about the thing. And when he finished, I was dumbstruck. I was like, wow. And he said, I did all that because I want you to know who I am. And now he said, I would like to know you. So would you please tell me your story? Wow. And I looked at my watch and said, Tim, where do you want me to begin? He looked at his watch and said, I've got an hour and a half before my flight takes me back to Dallas. Wow. Start at the beginning, would you please? And so that's leadership. And the culmination of all this, Jim, is the fact that when we showed up in San Diego with 150 of his leaders from this large, almost $1 billion holding company, I've never seen a guy more revered, more enjoyed, more liked than Tim. And it's because he was so authentic.
Wow. What a great story. What a great message for all of us. I mean, really, whether you're a leader or CEO of a $1 billion holding company, or you're a mom or dad or a teacher or a coach, or, leading a smaller organization, or leading, managing from the middle, wherever you're at, it's 100% relevant for every single listener, including me. So thank you for sharing that, Tom. and knowing my listeners, I talk to a lot of them individually. I work with a lot of them. I coach a lot of them. They have, and I think it's very common these days, is a lack of clarity around what their goals should be. As a result, there's a lack of focus. They're easily distracted. We live in a world where it's easy, more and more easy to be distracted every day with gadgets and technology and email, et cetera. And as a result, I think people lack that consistency that they want. That consistency, like, for example, that you had when you were an athlete, that I had when I was an athlete, when we were hyper-focused on our goals. What would you say to that person who's struggling to get the clarity around their goals, and as a result, they lack that focus and that consistency that they want, that they need to perform at their peak?
Absolutely. I'm mentored by, and a colleague of mine is Dr. John Kotter, a Harvard professor who is considered by Forbes and Time magazine as the world's foremost authority on leading change. And as it pertains to your question, Jim, I think there's two things from his research that came out over 40 years of research that is really interesting. One of the biggest challenges that prevent us from really growing is this concept called complacency. And let me give you just kind of an understanding of what that means. It's this feeling of self-satisfaction with danger or trouble looming around the corner. So essentially what people do is they go to work or come to work or live their days thinking that what I'm doing is just fine. This is based on a couple things. It's based on predominantly on past success, anecdotal success, historical success that could have happened years ago. And by the way, it's not intentional, it's not malicious, and it's not laziness, okay? But it's a sense that what I'm doing is okay. So we think that we're really putting in time and effort, and we are, no question about it. We're making efforts, we're moving towards things, but there's this sense of complacency that really holds us back. And what's the counterpart to complacency is a thing called true urgency. And true urgency is this. It's where people wake up and go to work every single day determined to duck real hazards and seek out and seize real opportunities. So what this does is, if you can just kind of grasp this concept, it's being exceptionally alert, it's being externally focused, internally aligned to your goals and values and vision, relentlessly aimed at winning. And here's the kicker. It's purging all the low value activities off of your calendar. To get to your question, yeah. I think a lot of people really have just so many things on their plate. I look at senior leaders' calendars that I work with, and they're bloated with things that don't allow them to win the day. I call it winning the day. How do you win the day? And so I think that's the critical component. I think we're so spread so thin sometimes. We're doing so many things that we get diffused. We're giving 10, 15% in 6 or 7 different areas, which don't allow us to really advance the ball any further down the field every day. We're always kind of at the same place at the end of the week, right? But people who are really focused on true urgency, avoiding real hazards. So what's a hazard? A hazard could be, well, I get too stuck in my email all the time. I have this sense that I feel like I need to be a yes person or respond to everybody that contacts me. Those could be hazards. What's a big opportunity? Well, what is it? A big opportunity is if I put my focused attention towards one or two things, I make a significant advance against the competition in the next 60 to 90 days versus doing things the way I've always done them. That's what a big opportunity is. And so, we get so all over the map thinking we have to respond to every email, touch every, everybody that contacts us, that I think we just don't set the time aside to really be as focused as we should on really what's really important. What's going to advance the ball down the field for me? What do I want to become? What do I want to do? And what are the obstacles that are preventing me from doing that?
I think you just spoke directly to the heart of every listener, Tom. One of the last things you said is we don't take the time. We don't set aside the time to do this, right? You mentioned earlier, how do you win the day? And I've come to realize through, my discussions with so many successful people like yourself on this podcast, in out in the real world as well as my own experience as an athlete and in athletics, the most common habit, the most common action item that successful people do is they do that. They set aside that time. Whether it's prayer or meditation or journaling or working with a performance coach or whatever the case may be. And I've given it a term. I call it the productive pause. When we think, when we pause, when we hit the pause button, you think you're gonna stop. You think it's something you're doing is actually gonna take longer, but it's actually the opposite, because you begin to work on the right things. You begin to stop working on the little things that are distracting you, and you know what to say no to, so you know what to say yes to. And I define the productive pause as a short period of focused reflection around specific questions that leads to clarity of action and peace of mind. And
that's good, Jim.
That's really what we're seeking, is that clarity of action, that peace of mind, but we can't get through all the minutia and really work on winning the day. Instead, we just show up at work and we dive into our email and the phone starts ringing, and before we know it, it's 5 o'clock and we're leaving, and we really didn't advance the ball down the field like you talked about. So.
Jim, that's good. I love the productive pause. I think that's a great, it says so much in just a small little 2-word phrase. Here, I've got to win the day if I can share with the people
Please.
that, all of your listeners.
Yeah.
Here's a simple little tool that we share with executives, and they seem to enjoy it. We certainly do it here in our office. When you start the day, you come into your office, do not touch a keystroke, don't look into the monitor. It's a vortex and you'll be gone. So stay away from your computer. Instead, grab a notepad or an iPad, sit in your big easy chair, swing away from your computer, turn off your phone, and spot yourself 10 minutes. And here's what I'd like you to do. In the first 5 of those 10 minutes, ask yourself this question, ponder, pray over this question. Create a list of 1 to 3 items, 1 to 3 opportunities that you'll go after that day that'll help you win the day. These are not tasks and they're not errands. These are big opportunities. What are 1 or 2, 3 things that you would really focus on today? Here's the deal. Your list can't be over 3, because psychologists tell us that when it goes over 3, we drop in productivity and efficiency about 65%. For some reason, the brain goes to chaos when our lists are beyond 3. It doesn't even need to be 3. It could be 1 or 2. So the first 5 minutes are thinking and writing that information down. The second 5 minutes is create a list of 1 to 3 dangers or hazards that would prevent you from winning the day. What are those things that trip you up, that prevent you from really achieving those initial, chasing those big opportunities for success? So it's just a real simple tool. It focuses your mind. It gets you squared away. And at the end of a month, you should be able to have ticked off a predominant number, at least 80% of your days that you won. And it'll make a difference in your performance and how you use your time.
Yeah, what a great action item for the listener. I'll have that written in the action plan in case you forget exactly what he's talking about there and all the details. So I will document that in the action plan. Just go to jimharshawjr.com/action, and I'll have all kind of great stuff from this episode. But that's another great nugget there, Tom. It's about living intentionally. It's about hitting the pause button and actually spending time so you get more of the right things done. And that's. And we're not just talking about work here. We're talking about relationships. We're talking about health and fitness. We're talking about personal growth. We're talking about every area of our life. Making more money. It's every aspect of our life where we can do this and benefit from it.
Absolutely, Jim. I'm right there with you on everything you just said.
And so, do you have? You mentioned Outliers before, but do you have any favorite books or resources that you've leaned on over the years, or that have been highly impactful for you in your career?
Oh my gosh, I do. I love them. In my line of work, Leading Change, written by Dr. Kotter, it's a seminal book. It's one of the top 25 business books in the last century by Time Magazine, and so that's kind of the Bible in business anyway. That I've kind of based a lot of my understanding and knowledge based on. So Leading Change is a fantastic book, and it's been revised by Dr. Kotter as well. There's been others too. Why one is escaping my brain right now. It's the great coach Joe Ehrman wrote a book. A Season of Life is what it's called. There we go. A Season of Life by Jeffrey Marks. And great book about being built for others. And Joe Ehrman's a former NFL football player for many, many years. And the kid that was a ball boy on the team ended up being a writer. And when he grew up and he went back to researched some of the old guys and where they are and what they're doing. And he came across Joe Ehrman, who is just the most amazing coach. He's an assistant coach for a high school in Maryland, and he brings his players around him before a big game and practice, and he yells out to them, "What's our job as coaches?" And they yell back, "To love us." And he goes, "And what's your job?" And they respond loud and sure, "To love each other." And it's a book about building young men, but it's a book that transfers into every facet of life, whether it's parenting, being a manager or a leader. So it's just a fabulous book. It's called The Season of Life.
The Season of Life. So again, for the listener, I'll have that in the action plan. I'll have a link to it. So that's a great recommendation, Tom. And we have got a lot of former athletes listening to this that listen to this show. So that's very relevant. And so let me ask you this last question, Tom. If you could go back and talk to your 20-year-old self, if you could sit across the table from your 20-year-old self and offer yourself one piece of advice, and this is a big question, if you could offer yourself one piece of advice, looking eye to eye across the table to your 20-year-old self, what would you say?
Oh, Jim, that's a big question. And right away I came up with 3 or 4 things, and you said just clarify one of them. I think that I would not that's so hard, Jim. I think I would take more risk. I really do. There's been a study out, and I'm starting to understand the study. They asked young people what they wanted in life. They wanted more security. They wanted more security. They wanted to know what was going to happen next. And they went to older folks who, in their very late ages, in their 80s and so forth, late 70s, 80s, and 90s, and said, "What would you like to have done differently?" And they said, "I wish I would have taken more risk."
Wow.
And
what
it's just
an
the
interesting
opposite
dichotomy.
It is. Isn't it fascinating?
Yeah.
And I think that I'm learning now that I'm, in my late 50s, taking a little bit more risk. I wish I would have done that more when I was a kid, and taking some more chances and seeing how things would have, turned out. And not that I have any regrets of where I'm at now, but I think I would have learned things faster, learn fast, fail fast type of thing.
Sure. Man, great advice. Great advice.
But that would be my one thing.
Well, I hope all the listeners take that to heart. That's a great piece of advice, Tom. So promote yourself a little bit. How do we follow you, find you? Tell us about your website, social media, etc.
Well, thank you. That's so kind of you. And I'm really careful about promoting myself. I think that, but that's sweet of you to say that. They can find me at tomflick.com, TOMF like in Frank, LICK, tomflick.com. And you can find stuff about what I do and the work that we provide. But I do, if people want to follow me on social media, there's Twitter, and also at the website you can follow me right there, all these Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and Instagram. And I am serious about tweeting and blogging about performance, teams, leadership, all different types of things that I think help people grow in this world. And so you can find that information there. And you can also, if there's anything I can do for any of your listeners, Jim, in their organizations and those types of things, don't hesitate to have them just give me a line. You can drop me a line right at tomflick.com. The email address is right there. And but thank you for allowing me to just share that information.
Sure. Well, you've shared a lot of great information with us. And so for the listener, if you go to jimharshawjr.com/action, grab the action plan for this episode, then I will have links to all of his social media, his website, et cetera, so you can reach out to him, follow him, et cetera. So, Tom, thank you so much for making time to come on the show.
Jim, it's been a pleasure. Really enjoyed spending time with you and getting to know you as well. And my best to you and all the people you serve.
Likewise, and the pleasure's all mine. And I can speak for the listeners in saying it's all ours. And for the listener, until next time, take the time to get clear on your goals and embrace failure as a stepping stone on your path to success.